Good afternoon. What's happening? Happy 4 o'clock. It was just feeling like a Madonna afternoon to me. So we had to do a little like a prayer. If you have requests, by the way, just send them to me. I'll be happy to make sure that we get what you want to hear on the turntable. Am I dating myself with turntable? I think so. That's all right. Talk about Studio 54 too. That would date me as well. Huh?
But your name's on the door, so you can do what you want.
Well, there you go.
Best DJ ever. That's why I tune in early for the music.
Aha. I love it. I love it. All right. So one of the things I always want to be certain to do when we're together is kind of give you some updates on things that are actually happening, right? Because stuff happens a lot of times that, and frankly, it happens in my world pretty much every day because I don't have just one real estate business. I have, 600 real estate businesses with all of you kind of having the experiences out in the field. And then a lot of them get pushed back to me, either for help or a question or just a, can you believe it? And so I wanted to just give you two quickies today, just to kind of give you an idea of strategy, an idea of what's going on in the marketplace. As many of you know, the market has been, almost bizarrely kind of white hot in the last 12 months. And so in the last 48 to 72 hours, I have been a buyer. A lot of you know I buy investment property, but I was a different kind of buyer in the last 72 hours. My grandmother is 92 and a half years old. She lives on Long Island, and most of my family also had lived on Long Island, and one by one, they started to move away. And the last two, my mother moved down to the Carolinas a few months ago, and the last person kind of close to my grandmother is my uncle, and he's moving up to Rhode Island shortly. And so my 92-year-old grandmother is kind of left alone on Long Island. And so she's been trying to decide what she was going to do, and she's finally made a decision, and she's going to move here to Ridgefield to be close to me. So in the last couple of days, I've been looking and purchasing a condo for her to purchase, for her to live in close to me. I had two experiences, and I wanted to just kind of relay those two experiences to you because I think they're relevant, right? It just kind of gives you an idea of what some of your own buyers may be feeling and how they can use strategy to get what they want. So I had an offer in on a property 2 days ago that was, my grandmother's 92. She needs first floor. She needs no stairs. She needs, stuff. And the property was under agreement. It had come back on the market, and then for reasons I don't remember. And so I jumped in and sort of made my offer. Now, I made my offer because there was nobody else currently on the table. I made my offer with a mortgage and contingent upon a mortgage because there was nobody, I wasn't fighting over it with anybody, right? And so when I got that to her late in the day, there was conversations in the evening, there was going to be a decision in the morning. Well, the decision in the morning then suddenly didn't come. And so just so you know, as a buyer's agent, when you're expecting an answer by like 9 or 10 o'clock, and by 12 or 1 o'clock, no one's responding to you, that always means something. And it doesn't mean that somebody is just at a long lunch, right? It means that either they're waiting for something else to come in or something else has come in and they're moving forward with someone else. So then I got real annoying, like on the phone to say, hey, just checking in. Hey, just checking in. Hey, just checking in. Hey, just checking in. Well, I finally got the word back. Yes. So another offer came in. Okay, great. So talk to me about that offer. And so the conversation was, well, it's cash. And I said, okay, then I'll remove my mortgage contingency and pay cash. And she said, notice she didn't come to me and said, so I'm curious, can you pay cash? She just made this assumption that where I was at was where I was at. I said, all right, I'll just remove the mortgage contingency and I won't get a mortgage. I'll pay cash. Oh, okay. Well, this is also no inspections. I'm like, okay, I'll remove my inspection contingency. She said, oh, okay, well, so that kind of makes the two offers pretty even. Why don't you tell us the amount of money that you're willing to spend then? And I said, no, I'm waiting for you to have a conversation with your sellers since I was first to the table. The courteous thing to do is to come back to me and say, just match the second offer in price and terms, and we'll sell it to you. So why don't you go get confirmation from your sellers that you can tell me the number. I will look for you to prove it. So you need to show me their offer. And then I'll just match I've already matched the terms, I'll match the price. She says, okay, well, I'll call you back. So she calls him back in an hour. And she says, okay, so they're actually going to go to highest and best. And I said, really? I said, I'm curious, do you think that has to do with opportunity or greed? And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, is it because the opportunity presented itself, or were the numbers already kind of sufficient and this is just a version of greed? And she said, I'm not really sure how to answer your question. I said, well, I'm certain how to answer yours. Please withdraw my offer. And she said, what do you mean withdraw? You mean you just want to stay where it is? I said, no, I don't want to stay anywhere. I'm withdrawing the offer. I'm no longer interested in purchasing the property. And she said, oh, okay. I said, so you know what? Thank you so much for all that you've done. I hope the other offer, when they hear the same news, doesn't do the same. What's the lesson? The lesson is, when you're a listing agent, sometimes enough has to be enough. And you have to help sellers recognize that sometimes you go from 2 or 4 or 7 offers to 0. Sometimes that happens. How many of you as a listing agent have experienced multiple offers where when the seller got a little greedy, all of a sudden everyone said, yeah, you know what? I think I'm just out. The most I've seen is 4 offers down to 0, all just evaporated because of greed, right? So I just wanted to give you an example of what that looks like from the listing side and how some buyers might react. Was there a question? Somebody I think Stephen had his hand up and then.
No, I was kind of just agreeing because I've been in that situation. And sometimes you have to have the conversations with your sellers that they need to be like realistic and that they're jeopardizing the deal. And that's why you're there.
Yeah, 100%, right? 100%. So then the second story is the unit I moved to. Now, truth be told, part of the reason I withdrew my offer is because something better came on the market while she kind of diddled around and didn't get back to me. Something better came on that was more suitable and actually kind of perfect for my grandmother. So I withdrew from that one. I immediately went to the other one and said, okay, look, I see your property isn't showable until tomorrow. This was last night. However, I'm making a full price, no contingencies, cash offer, sight unseen right now. You'll have the documentation in 30 minutes. And the listing agent said to me, oh, can you do that? Oh. And I said, I'm not sure I understand your question. She said, well, why would you not want to see it first? I said, because I've been selling real estate in this town for 22 years. They're all the same. I see your pictures. You took great pictures. I don't need to go and walk through it. It suits the needs of what I need it for. And so let's just get it done. Okay, send it to me. Perfect. So she sent it to me. I had an appointment. I went through and I walked through it at 10 o'clock this morning and met her there, the listing agent. And here's what's interesting to me. What's interesting to me is she said to me, you know, it sounds like we're expecting another offer. I don't have anything yet. And I said, well, let me ask this. Did the offer that I made not fulfill kind of everything the seller was looking for? And she said, yes, it did. I said, well, tell me what I could do to the offer to make it better. And she said, well, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. And I said, okay, so you know what, let's do this. It's 10:30. I would like an answer before noon. So here's what we're going to do. I'm putting $31,500 down, right? Because I don't put 1% down. As a buyer, I want to show strength. And so I just put the full 10% down when I make the offer. So I wrote a check for $31,500. to the seller's attorney, and I handed it to her and said, here's what I want you to tell the seller. I want you to tell the seller that I would like to incentivize her to answer me before 12 noon. And the incentive is that this check I'm handing you is non-refundable. So one way or the other, she earns $31,500. If she says yes to me and somehow I decide not to buy it, the $31,000 is hers. If she says yes to me and I do buy it, well, the $31,000 is still hers. I'll just send the rest of the money along at the closing. And she answered the same way. She looked at me and she said, can you do that? And I said, well, yeah, I just did. I'm going to go back to the office and revise the contract now. So the contract says the same thing. And oh, by the way, when she says yes to me, notice that assumptive close. When she says yes to me before 12 noon, she'll also have to accept all others in backup positions. And I'll write that into the contract as well. So you'll have that in about 15 minutes. If you would just give her a shout and get back to me, we have 90 minutes to make this work. I so look forward to working through this with you. Have a lovely afternoon, morning, bye. And out I strolled. And at 11:55, she called me and said, we have a deal. I'll get you the documentation. So what's the aha? What are you hearing from those kinds of conversations, from those scenarios?
Speak to the agent about everything. Get to know them.
Well, yes, speak to them and get to know them. What else with the agent? Because there's an additional answer to speaking to the agent. What else? A bunch of you are muted. You can all fight for it.
Oh.
Loss
I
aversion.
think it's to know what you, oh, sorry. I think it's to know what you want. I mean, you must shock these realtors. I can't imagine the conversations, but the bottom line is, you're winning the deals because you're not playing games. And so many of these people are playing all kinds of games that they forget that you don't have to play the game. And there you are giving them, saying, I'm giving you what you want. What's the problem here? And they can't even answer the question, which is so funny to me. I find it funny, but.
Right. So good,
Well,
excellent point. What else?
just say yes.
Yeah, right. Like, and give them reasons to just say yes, right?
Yeah,
Make sure that the games that aren't being played are not on your side. Just give them reasons to say yes. And again, we're talking about how you win, right? How you win. Go ahead, Donna.
So I'm going to say something. It's going to sound a little mean, and it might even sound a little flippant.
Oh, I'm excited now. Buckle in, everybody.
And so you're describing like what my life has been for like the last 18 months. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. I've realized two things. There are a lot, well, I'll give you the good one first. Most agents that we're going to deal with, most of the co-brokes that you're going to deal with, they don't have the training. They don't have all this learning and people to bounce stuff off that are going to give them good, solid foundations. So the other side is this. You better know what you're doing, because more than half of the time, you might be not only coaching your clients, you may be doing some serious coaching with your co-brokes. So your first scenario, you pointed it towards greed, and that may have been, but as you were talking, I still heard lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, lack of the different strategies. Just realize that, and again, not because I'm like all that smart, that's not it. But you're going to find out that you are smarter than the average agent that you're going to walk into. Just by going through this Ignite, you're going to find out you have more of a foundation than a lot of the agents, and I don't care how much money they're making. Okay, so I'm sorry about that too. No, I'm not sorry about that. Just know that the foundation that you're getting here, and to know your skill and your craft, is what gets you through these transactions when the other person is lacking in some sort of skill or ability.
Yeah, so true. And thank you for that, Donna, because it's the point that Donna is making is, even if you have had your license for about 22 minutes, right? Some of you have had your license for like 22 minutes. That doesn't make you less worthy of winning the deal. It doesn't make you the it makes you less experienced sometimes in these scenarios, but it certainly doesn't make you less prepared, right? Which is why I tell you some of these stories, right? I think sometimes people are like, oh my goodness, like Rick's gonna tell us another story. I tell them to you because when I hear them, or in this case, live them, to describe them to you, my hope is that it arms you with strategies, scripts, ideas about how you can win for yourself or win for your client, right? And so I told you two different stories on either side, listing agent and buyer agent, right? How you might have handled something a little bit differently to create a slightly different result. Go ahead, John.
I was gonna say too, one thing I noticed from one of my jobs here at K Jewelers is, for example, we sell watches here. There's a lot of clients that come in that know way more about watches because they've been collecting watches over the year than I do. And like one thing that I've done, well, like in those situations where a customer knows more about a certain product than I do, is you gotta just maintain a certain level of professionalism. Because if not, they see that, and this is all like a negotiation. And once they see that you lost your composure and lost your professionalism, you're completely at the mercy of the other person. And then from there, it's like, they're pretty much free to do whatever they want, because at that point, they already know that you don't know what you're talking about. You go from being the credible source of knowledge to just a person that works here pretty much.
Yeah.
So like, maintaining that professionalism is very important.
Great point. And I'll tell you what a perfect segue to what I asked Debbie or to log in to talk with you about for just a few minutes. And that is the idea, what John just said, you solve most of that when you stay on the course of asking great questions, right? You don't have to be the smartest person in the room if you know great questions to ask. As a matter of fact, who knows more becomes irrelevant. It's not about who knows more. It's about who can ask the questions that drive the transaction forward, that drive a conversation forward. You don't need tons of knowledge to do that. So I asked Debbie, anything else from those stories? Stephen, you were unmuted. Did you have something else?
So
Rick-
part of me is like,
Just getting
what
ready.
happens if they
Rick,
took
can
your
I
money and
just-
ran?
Can I just jump in for a second?
Yeah, so we're gonna go to Stephen and then Cal.
Okay, go ahead, Stephen.
So my whole thought process was, I get where you were coming from. Like, they don't, the other offer was coming in that obviously you made a very serious offer, like here's 31,000, either way it's non-refundable. But like, I mean, I would like never advise a client to do that, because I'd be like, holy crap, say if they take their money and run.
Okay, so let's stop right there a second, because I'm going to challenge a word that was used, right? And it's not just Stephen who uses this word, you all use it. And that's advise. I would encourage each of you to stop advising your clients to do anything or not do anything. That's not our role. Our role is to present clients with all the options that exist, help them see the pros and cons of each of those options, and then ask them which path they want to go down, and then support them down that path. Right, so you might have a conversation. Now, I'm not sure I agree with they could just take your money and run. Like the only way that it's non-refundable and they get to keep it is if I choose not to buy the property, right? That was the scenario that I set up. So it's not like I can write them a check. And remember, you're not writing checks to the clients, you're writing checks to attorneys' escrow accounts. So there are protections in place for some of these funds. But the point is, and Stephen, thank you for being brave enough to put it on the table. And this is not me not picking on you. I'm just using something you said as a teaching moment, because we all do it, right? We think that we're there to ride in on a white horse with all of our skill and knowledge and save the day and tell people the best thing to do, right? They look to us for advice and guidance. Well, then they shouldn't. They should look to us for education and options. They should look to us as a sounding board for pros and cons. But that's kind of where it stops. And that's why, from a script perspective, I want you to get really, really used to saying a couple of words. And those words are, so based on everything we just discussed, good, bad, and in between, which path do you think you want to go down to accomplish your goals? That's what I ask. Which path do you want to go down? There are like 4 different ways we can proceed here. We just talked about the pros and cons of each of them. Which one do you want to choose? Well, which one would you choose, Rick? Great question. Would it surprise you to know that that's way less relevant than you think? Because it's not my money. I would never presume to tell you how to spend your money, ever. That's not how partners behave. Instead, I want you to know the pros and cons of each of the paths we can go down so that you can make a great choice about which one you want to choose. It's a slightly different approach, one that works brilliantly. So I know there were some other questions, but I see I have Cal and I have John. Debbie, what is your time frame? Do you have 5 more minutes to spend with us? Okay,
Mhm, yes.
so we'll go to Cal and then John. So Stephen, I know I cut you off. Did you have some?
I think I would have said, let me understand what you're saying, so I'm clear of what you were saying. And before I would say anything like that broker said, I need to call someone to see how I can make this happen,
Well,
rather
yeah,
than say what the
like,
broker said.
check in with the client, right? Because that's another mistake that a lot of agents make. And it's frustrating because agents make decisions on behalf of their clients without consulting with the client.
How can we
Just
make
so
it
you know-
happen?
Just so you know,
Mm.
you're not empowered to do that. You don't have that authority, just by the way, right? So whatever I said to her, right, and both of them were lovely. No one, I'm not picking on either of them, except for the fact that what I found was in the scenario that we were put in both situations, I had to drive the listing side as well as the buyer side to make sure things were moving in the direction that I intended them to go in.
Out of that, Donna's move just now was fabulous.
Right? That's just kind of how it works. Okay, and so John had his hand up. Go ahead, John.
So I was gonna ask, so let's say like I have a listing and my seller is dealing with someone that great. We have multiple offers. Me as the agent, let's say you were my first offer and I met with you and we had something going, and then multiple other offers came in and my seller wanted to be greedy and waited for other offers. From there, it's like, wouldn't it kind of be like a conflict of interest? Because like, in terms of like being courteous, you know, it would be with you because you was my first initial offer, but my seller wants to be greedy. And even though you had an offer that matched all the other offers, let's say they wanted to go with the other ones. I don't know, something like that.
Well, so let's be clear about where we who we take direction from, right? So part of our mandate when we are hired is that we follow the lawful instruction of our clients. And so being greedy is not against the law. If sellers choose to have everybody kind of keep bidding up and bidding up and bidding up, right? There are times where it's really hard to control that, right? I'll use the house that I currently live in, right? You usually get this example further into Ignite, but I'll use it now, right? Debbie and I listed a property. How long ago now, Deb? 18 years ago, I think, right? Lily's 19, so 18 years ago. My daughter was only 1 when we bought that house. Debbie and I went and listed this property. We went on a Sunday, I think, and did whatever we were going to do. And driving back to the office, I turned to her and I said, I think I'm going to buy that house.
We weren't even out of the driveway.
And she said, what? And I said, I think I'm going to buy that house. It was the perfect house for the scenario I needed. I needed a house. My father-in-law lived with us for many years. And so I needed something that had something separate for him, right? I wanted flat land for my kids. And it had those things, right? And when you live in Ridgefield, it's called Ridgefield for a reason. Finding flat land is already like, there's 7 houses that meet the criteria. So the idea that this was the one for me was the one for me. And so by the time we put it on the market, we had already given the clients advice because this was in 2003. Yes, that's correct. as I tell the story, just watch Debbie's box because she'll correct any mistakes that I make. It was 2003, so the market was just it was the first year of that real rev up that lasted through the end of 2005 into early 2006. So things were moving quickly, and we gave the clients the advice that, look, we'll put it on the market Monday, we'll have the broker open house on Tuesday, and we'll wait until Sunday, collect offers, and then open everything on Sunday and make a decision on Sunday. That way you get the most exposure, you get the most amount of offers, right? And we gave them that advice. Unfortunately, then I decided I was going to be one of those buyers. And yet the advice was given because that was the right advice to give our seller clients. I stepped away from the list side. Debbie took over completely. And in that scenario, by the time we got to the weekend, there were 3 people who were really fighting over that house, me being one of them. Right? Debbie Orr is one of the most skilled listing agents I think I know. And maybe one of the more skilled listing agents that I don't know. And she struggled, tell me if I'm making this up, Deb, she struggled to control those clients from literally keeping it spinning out of control, right? It was always highest and best. Okay, well, now let's do another round. Let's do another round. And she eventually conveyed to them the concept that, you know, pigs get fat and hogs go to slaughter, right? I mean, you know that concept. And we ended up stopping, and I ended up winning. So what's the point? The point is we have to follow the lawful instruction of our clients. And sometimes we disagree with the instruction that we're given. We can help them see the pros and cons of continuing to do this highest and best spiral. And I'm certain that's what Debbie did every step of the way. Okay, so you could get to a point of having everyone walk away, right? There's the con. Are you willing to risk where you're at to go back to zero? And yet, in those scenarios, we continue to follow their lawful instruction. Go ahead, Deb.
And I will add one more thing, because, you know, it's easy to say, oh, you just make a Chinese wall and you separate yourself. Well, here I am negotiating with my business partner on the other side in the purchase of what's a dual agency situation, because there was no designated at that point. We were not practicing designated, and trying to keep things under control. And truly, in my human heart, not wanting him to overpay. And how important was that to you?
Overpaying or not?
Yes.
It was not important to me at all, because that was the property that fit the needs of my family.
So I was struggling, I mean, internally struggling. I remember this vividly. That was a difficult thing for me. And I sent you to have conversation with George.
Yeah.
Because I felt you needed somebody to be advising you. And then you had to tell him, don't practice.
Mind your own beeswax.
Yeah, right, exactly. Ultimately, everything turned out well.
Right.
That was a learning lesson.
And here's the end of that story that Debbie's telling, is that the reason that I was okay spending whatever I needed to spend is because that house fit my needs, period. It didn't matter to me that I think I ended up paying, by today's standard, I like paid asking price. I think I paid $47,000 or $51,000 over the asking price.
Something like
Right?
that.
But in 2000, in the market in 2003, right, that was like what are you doing? And the answer was I was winning. I won the house that I wanted to live in. So a lot of lessons. One lesson is be careful that you're not telling your clients or giving an opinion about how your client should spend their own money. It's their money, right? In that scenario, it was my money. I had it to spend. And so and that's where I wanted to live.
And also be careful how you advise a seller who starts to exhibit being overly greedy.
Yeah.
Because you really do have to caution them on the possibilities of ending up empty-handed.
100%.
And that's another class.
Yeah, indeed. It's a class that we'll address probably in 2 weeks, right here, but 2 weeks from now. So all those stories lead us to, right, me giving you some strategies. Donna, did you have something for us? I'm sorry, I saw you unmuted and I forgot you.
That's
No, no.
okay. I
Go
was
ahead.
just thinking your first scenario today where the agent, was asking for highest and best. I feel like that's what I would have done as well in the best interest of my client. And I know you said, well, you were first, but is the first offer really relevant? Isn't it to get the highest and best for your client?
Well, so yeah, really great point, right? And so I told you that story from the perspective of me representing a buyer, right?
Right.
And so what I was modeling was the way I wanted to speak to a listing agent, because there was a lot of subliminal, these are not the droids you're looking for, right? I was using some Jedi mind tricks, or attempting to use some Jedi mind tricks to seed what I wanted to happen in her head. It didn't work, right? And so she went back and decided with the seller, she went back and the seller decided, at least I hope the seller decided,
Right.
to come back and ask both people to throw money at them. That's all well and fine. The conversation I had with her was to attempt to mitigate that, to simply say, no, I knew that was her, the choice that could be made. And I knew, frankly, in my heart of hearts, that was likely where it was going, right? But the conviction with which I delivered, here's my expectation. Sometimes when you speak to people that way, they just listen and do what you tell them to do. And so as an advocate for the buyer, who happened to be me in this scenario, as an advocate for the buyer, I just simply told her exactly what the scenario was that I expected to have happen. Because if you can do that, and 50% of the time they come back and say, well, you know what? Because maybe she didn't consider that. Maybe all she was ever taught was, well, when there's multiple offers, just have everyone clamor and throw money around and do this highest and best thing. So I was attempting to offer her a strategy and convey what my expectation was. And in this scenario, it didn't work. Does that help, Donna, explain that a little bit better?
Yeah, it does. Except for you could have had a buyer like you on your Ridgefield house that really would have gone up a lot higher.
Yeah.
But no, I get what you're saying. That makes sense. You were, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So I asked Debbie to pop on in this morning. Is it morning? Have we been on?
It's almost evening.
We haven't been on for 15 hours. It's not the next morning already. So I asked Debbie to pop on this afternoon because she leads a program a number of days a week in the morning and then some days in the afternoon that I want her to just talk with you about for a few minutes. And I want to encourage you. We're moving into material that some of you may start to step back and say, okay, I'm not 100% sure how to do this. And Debbie leads a program right now each day or 3 or 4 days a week that will help you.
I can never remember when it is.
I can't ever remember when it is, which is why she's going to talk to you about it. But it will help you answer the question, how do I do that? Right? So Debbie, can you describe what it is you're doing and how you're doing it and see if we can't encourage people to kind of join you?
So what we're doing is practicing scripts and reviewing and practicing scripts to help everybody. And I did it for myself, actually, to get myself into the habit of asking questions. Questions put you in the power seat. And it's not a natural behavior for us to ask question after question. And so it requires practice. And Donna in particular, and I have been on several script practicing webinars literally every day, every morning. And they've been so powerful and so helpful in modeling what this does and what the experience is. Would you say that's correct, Donna? And really strengthening the way we talk to our clients.
Yeah.
There's such and as a new agent, I've observed that a lot of folks feel like, oh, they don't know enough to get out in the field yet. And ideally, this system and this practice will help you, have confidence that you do and you can jump out into the field and really get your feet wet, because it will strengthen your confidence. It will build confidence for you. A lot of times agents feel like they have to put a red cape on and be the hero. And what I'm going to tell you is that's not your job. Your job, I love the way Rick says, provide options for your clients. That is when you go down this path and take this consultative approach, it makes the business easier. And I remember literally the day we turned the switch and went to this model, I called Rick on the phone. I remember driving down the road saying, oh my gosh, this is so different. And it's so much easier, plus effective. So here's what we do. At 9:30 in the morning, we jump on right after the Crush It call, and we go over a topic, a series of questions, and you have them in front of you. I put them on the screen. And what we're doing and what we're going to do all next week for sure is we'll have scenarios. And I've been doing buyer scenarios because I'm finding most of the people on the program are working with buyers. We're going to do another week of buyers, and then we'll shift over to sellers. We'll have a scenario, and we're going to practice and addressing an issue that a buyer is going to have and going 3 deep on that question until, and we just go boom, 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 one after the other. You can play or not play, just listen, take notes, whatever you want to do. And then we mute everyone and you jump on the phone and make calls. And I can give you suggestions of who to call. And then we call just for 1 hour. We jump off and we download. I'll tell you, something happened yesterday that was not scheduled. And I think it was like the coolest thing. As we were starting, I got a call on my phone that I knew was somebody I had dialed out to. And so I picked it up and I told everybody, just hold on, and left the mic open. So they got to hear me make the call. And what happened, Ronnie? Ronnie was on the call.
It was great to watch Deb in action and actually hear her, because it's a difference between, reading it and talking about it, but just, it just really was helpful just to, know how to, we couldn't hear what, obviously the other person was saying. We could, though, obviously get a feel for it by Deb's questions back to the person. And this person, ironically, was a little like more wondering, how did she get my phone number, was her concern. And Deb just handled it smoothly as can be. It wasn't no excitement, and responded to everything in such a calm manner, and wound up having a conversation with a woman who obviously was more concerned about the number, not really having a conversation. So it just was helpful to watch her in practice.
The thing that I find really fascinating, because I've been shadowed by a lot of people, is they're surprised that what we teach in these classes is what we actually say when we're with the clients. That's like, Donna's laughing. I mean, why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? Right? And so that was an opportunity for them to hear that I was dealing with some interesting objections, and there was no defensiveness. There's no need for defensiveness when you know the questions to ask. So we invite everybody to join us, have fun. And it's only from 9:30 to 11, and we're done. And you feel like you've really done your job. So come on, come one, come all. And you'll look for the, I'll put my Zoom number in the chat so you have it, because it's not the MyKW Zoom room, it's my Zoom room. All righty, and that's Monday through Thursday. Thursdays, we've been doing 5 to 6:30. I also opened up the chat room this morning at 9:30, just because I had time to do that. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. And what I
Pleasure.
encourage you to do is even if you're kind of like freaked out by what Debbie just described, like I can see some of you are like, wow, that kind of sounds awesome. Let me go and do that. And some of you are like, yeah, okay, that sounds like maybe something I'll do 3 months from now. Maybe, maybe I'll learn a little more. And here's what I would encourage you to do. Just jump on anyway, right? The reality is be a fly on the wall if you're a little timid about jumping in with both feet. Be a fly on the wall and listen to what's going on for a time or 2 or 3, and you'll start to realize that it's like no one gets carted off in an ambulance. Like there's no negative physical repercussions from being a part of that program. Instead, there's learning that happens, practice that happens, confidence that gets built, and hold on to your socks, appointments that get booked for business. All right. So with that, so we invite you Monday morning, 9:30, jump on the Crush It call at 9, take a little coffee break from 9:15 to 9:30, and then jump on with Debbie, and you'll watch how fast your confidence will rise. We ended yesterday. I know you spent a bunch of time with Karen, so I hope you had a whole lot of ahas with Karen yesterday. And we're going to jump right back in from where we stopped yesterday when I left you. By the way, my time with Gary was awesome. I will be bringing you some of that next week as we go forward. So thank you for allowing me to step out and spend a couple of hours with him. So we ended up on page 31 in the Power Session 1, talking about the 4 powerful habits, right? And so before we cruise forward, I want to just review the Ignite habits one more time. I want to step a step back and do 3 of the 6 personal perspectives. I told you we were going to do 2, 2, and 2, and I just didn't have the time to do them yesterday. So we'll do 3 today and 3 Monday, and then those will be done. And then we're going to dive into the rest of Power Session 1 and a little bit of Power Session 2 today. So a reminder of your 4 powerful habits on page 31. Those are grow and manage your database, right? For those of you who are brand new, you have to add create, grow, and manage your database, right? Because you have to actually create it first. Remember, we talked about starting right here on your phone. You all have contacts, so you already have a database. And if it were me, what I would do is I would export from my phone right into Command. I know there's a way to do that. How you do it, I don't really know. Speak to the technology folks in your market center. Joe McHugh can help you with that. Frankly, Scott Leroy Marketing, which is an external company that we use to assist you with your tech needs. Scott Leroy Marketing can help you upload or export from your phone directly into Command. So talk to your agent services folks. Adonis is back on Monday from his honeymoon, so you can certainly talk to Adonis, talk to Joe McHugh, talk to Deb Linke, talk to Sam Lopez, talk to somebody in your market center to help you connect with Scott Leroy to get that done, because it's a whole lot simpler than typing them in one by one. However, some of you may choose, instead of doing one fell swoop, to kind of take 10 at a time and move them from your phone into your Command CRM. The only reason I like the 10 at a time is that you get to kind of review them, see what you're missing. Are you missing emails? Are you missing phone numbers? Are you missing addresses? Kind of take note of what you're missing and maybe make some outbound phone calls or send some outbound emails to say, hey, I'm just doing a database refresh. From time to time, I send out really exciting and valuable VIP opportunities, and I don't want you to miss out. I wondered, could you email me back, or if you're on the phone, can you give me or leave or text me back an email address or a phone number, whatever you're missing, right? So one of your scripts, outbound scripts that you could use going through your database is just asking for them to complete the contact record with information that you don't have. But you heard the script I used, right? You're not calling saying, hey, I want to make sure that I can contact you in 79 different ways to annoy you as much as I possibly can, 36 times a year, right? That would probably not be a terribly effective script. Instead, we say something like, hey, from time to time, I like to reach out and offer my VIP clients and potential clients something of value. I want to make sure you don't miss out. We'll talk about what those things are a little later today. Habit number 2, speak with 10 people. So you're going to be growing the database by 10 people a day and then speaking to 10 people a day. If 10 people a day seems daunting, well, then start with 2. Start with 1. Have a conversation a day and do that every day for 5 days. Create the habit. Feel the victory of speaking to 1 person a day. And then next week, make it 5. And do 5 for 2 weeks. And then move up to 8. And then move up to 10, right? If you've never done it before, for some of you, 10 in your head is like that. Oh, how am I doing that? Create incremental success. Create something that is winnable for you. Don't create a business plan that is going to push you to fail. I'd rather it push you to win, even if the win is small, and then grow that over time. Does that make sense to everybody? And if you listen to that and say, well, that's so wussy. Why would I call 1 person a day? Like, who can't call 10 people a day? I think I want to make it 20. Well, then do 20. Right? I'm not saying don't do what you think you need or want to do. I'm saying create comfort first, because when you create comfort, you'll actually do the do. And then start to push yourself into some discomfort as you grow that and create consistency. You will have to push through discomfort, right? But remember, that's just the same. That's just what's on the other side of discomfort. Growth, right? Right. So you get growth. Everything.
I thought pain.
Right. Well, so discomfort and pain and fear, that's all on one side of the coin, because those are all the same things. When you flip it, growth, excitement, success, results, like that's on the other side of the coin. So just recognize that if you're starting to feel one of those less effective feelings, just flip the coin over, because you have it in front of you. Just make a different decision. Remember, fear and excitement are the exact same chemically in your body. It's the same emotion. It's just that your brain interprets the chemical differently. So you have to just be smarter than your own brain, right? You have to be able to turn around and say, oh man, I am so fearful of that. Wait a minute, you tricky little brain. That's just excitement. Woohoo! Give it a woohoo and go do it anyway, right? What's the definition of courage? Feeling the fear and doing it anyway, right? So just be courageous. And then, of course, follow up, right? Follow up can be a whole bunch of things. It can be a text follow up after you have a conversation with somebody. Hey, it was lovely to talk with you. It can be a handwritten note with some business cards, right? But the follow up, the fortune's in the follow up, right? We're going to dive into that a little bit deeper today and then again on Tuesday. And then, of course, knowing your market, right? So just a review of those 4 habits that we're looking for you to build in your business over the course of the next 4 to 5 weeks and forever and ever after that. Amen. So I want you to, for those of you who still have Power Session 1 up and open, turn back to page 10, because we skipped over the personal perspectives, and I do want to at least touch on them today so that you've heard them and understand what they are, because we will reference them throughout our time together. And so the 6 personal perspectives were designed to answer the question, what differentiates those who achieve at the highest level from those who don't seem to accomplish much at all, or at least as much as those who achieve at a high level? Right? To me, it's the simplified version of that is, what makes an achiever an achiever? What do they know that everybody else doesn't know? And these 6 personal perspectives are just about a complete version of that answer. So let's run through them real quick. So personal perspective number 1, top of page 10, is what? Somebody read that. What's it called? It says step 1,
Self-mastery.
commit to self-mastery, right? We're not going to spend a ton of time on that one because we spent most of our time on Tuesday without really knowing it, discussing your head and committing to self-mastery, right? So you have to master your head in order to move forward in business and create the success that you're looking for. Frankly, you need to conquer what's between your ears if you're going to create success in anything. Right? Whatever business you might start, you decide you're going to start a new exercise routine. You're going to start eating differently, right? You need to have it clear in your head and commit to being clear in your head before anything will really take root, right? So personal perspective number 1 is that you're going to commit, which means, by the way, do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes to tame your brain, to make sure that you have control of what's driving everything, that thing between your ears. Personal perspective number 2, somebody read that sucker.
Commit to the 80-20 principle.
Commit to the 80-20 principle. Thank you, Amin. Now, most of you have heard of the 80-20 rule, right? It says that 80% of your results come from 20% of your activities. Right? It's been around forever and ever, amen. It's been, I can't even remember what the date was. I think it was the 1600s, some Italian philosopher named Vilfredo Pareto, which is why it's called Pareto's principle, right? I just call it the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule in real estate ultimately says that 80% of your results will be determined by 20% of your actions. Would it be helpful if we just kind of listed out what that 20% is made of? Would that be helpful? All right, well, Christy said yes, so we're going forward. If you're bored halfway through this list, just remember, Christy asked for it. So there's 7 bullet points. So if you're taking some notes, and this is not in your materials, if you're taking notes, you need 1 through 7 or 7 bullet points, or at least 7 lines on a piece of paper or 7 lines on a computer. So the activities that make up the 20% of a real estate professional are, number 1, lead generation. I know that's a shocker. So number 1 is lead generation. I will put these in the chat as we go. Number 2, I think a lot of people confuse with number 1. So lead generation, right? Lead generation is finding people. Activity number 2 is what you do once you find them. It's lead conversion, right? That's the follow-up portion of this. Lead conversion is actually more important than lead generation. A lot of people generate a whole bunch of people, right? Remember I told you that story on Tuesday, big bucket of people, 10,000 people in her database? Except who'd she really know, right? Who's she able to actually convert from those 10,000? 10,000 names is just who you generated. Now you have to work on converting them. So that's number 2. Number 3, the natural thing that comes from lead conversion is what do you think? It starts with an A.
Appointments.
Appointments, exactly right, John. Thank you for that. So number 3 is appointments. Number 4 is what naturally occurs when you actually go on appointments.
Listings.
Right? So yes, and we're going to call it contracts, right? Because they could be seller listings or buyer listings. You're going to get hired by somebody, and that's a contract. And then you're going to write a contract for someone to buy a house or receive a contract if you're the listing agent, right? And then you're going to use those contracts as a point of negotiation. So you have lead generation, lead conversion, appointments, contracts, and negotiation, which brings us to number 5, the word that most of us love the most, closings. Closings. Now, today, that doesn't necessarily mean going to your closings, because the world is a little bit different today than it was back when I was still in the field, right? In the old days, we all used to show up at the closing table, and that was the buyers and the sellers and both agents and both attorneys, right? It was like a big old party. We all just sat around and held hands, sang Kumbaya. It was great. And that doesn't really happen all that much anymore, right? Closings are typically separate, buyers and sellers, and agents aren't really a part of that, that actual event much anymore. However, it stays on the list because there are a lot of things that have to be done to prepare for that closing and be ready for that closing that you need to consider. So we're going to keep that right on the list, even though the actual attend the event of closing is far less frequent, done far less frequently today than it used to be. Number 6, you're actually doing number 6 right now. It's education, practice, and role play. Education, practice, and role play. So education comes from going to classes, right? Finding out what you don't know. Practice is one of those things that happens in a program like what Debbie's offering at 9:30 each day, where you just get to go and listen to people and participate, hearing people do things, practicing yourself, answering some questions, giving your best shot at, well, if I were in that scenario, here's how I would handle it. And then the last one, I know as adults, we typically run for the hills with this one. No, not role play. Ah! And yet I will tell you, if you want to be awesome, you gotta real play it, right? You've got to sit across from one another. Like when I see Donna walking in the hallway, she needs to say to me, will you do it for 4%? And I need to objection handle that right then and there, right? That's how we help each other get better, is we role play certain scenarios so that we know the words that work and we know the words that help us move the client forward, and they're practiced. We know what they sound like coming out of our mouths. Because if we don't role play and practice it, here's what happens. I can tell you because I've lived this. You're then in a scenario with a buyer or a seller and something comes up, the words pop up in your head and they're get stuck right here. They won't leave your lips. As much as you try and push them out, they don't come out. Because some fear creeps in or some discomfort creeps in because you haven't gone ahead and practiced that. You haven't role played that enough to know that when you say those words, good things happen. So don't shy away from that. And number 7, whoops, that is not what I typed. Hold on. There we go. That's what I typed. Number 7 is money management. Money management. Now, I can tell you this. If you don't do enough of 1 or 2, you don't have to usually worry about number 7. Right? Because it's not that hard to manage money that's not being made. There are other issues that pop up, but a focus on number 1 and number 2 brings you more and more opportunity to have number 7 show up. Here's what's kind of fun. If the 80-20 rule exists kind of in everything, and I just gave you the 7 things that make up of all the activities that you could be focused on, if you focus on those 7 things every day you get up to work, guess what? You'll make money. Your business will grow. What's cool is those 7 things, there's an 80-20 rule just out of those 7. What's 20% of 7? rounded up. 2, right? So the 2, if you look at the 80-20 rule in these 7, the 2 most important ones are that lead generation and lead conversion. Everything else flows from that. Make sense? Thank you, Nick, for popping that in there. All right, guys, let's move on to personal perspective number 3. This is the last one we're going to cover today. Somebody read that. What is it? Move
from E to P.
Move from E to P. Now that has nothing to do with eating your vegetables. We're not eating peas. Well, I should tell you a story one time about peas in my house. Oh my goodness. Move from E to P ultimately is a personal perspective around personal growth. The E stands for that easy or entrepreneurial way of doing something. And what that means is most of us come to the table with a certain amount of talent or skill for X. And we can do something right up to the point that that certain amount of natural talent or skill allows us. And so if you're running a business, if you come into real estate and decide, well, I'm going to run that business from the perspective of that easy entrepreneurial style, just kind of doing what comes naturally, you can create some success. There's nothing that says that that will fail for you. However, at some point, everybody's E hits a ceiling of achievement. Your way of doing something creates a lid for you. And so what we need to do then is focus on moving to a more P, a more purposeful style of, in this example, growing your business. Right? So at some point, when you're struggling to move forward, I will tell you, I got stuck in my career. I got stuck at $12 million in volume a year. I did it year after year after year. Well, that's not really true. I did it year after year. And I about halfway through my 3rd year, when it looked like, okay, I don't see how I'm doing more than $12 million in a year. I don't get it. I hired an assistant. I thought I could. I didn't know what else to do because nothing moved me forward. What I know now is that I hit my natural ceiling of achievement. For me, I could figure it out and make it up well enough that I moved myself from 0 million to $12 million in volume. I could not get past that. And what I had to do was I had to look at other opportunities to be more purposeful. How was I going to show up differently, learn something different, behave differently, create different levels of consistency that would bring me across that threshold of that ceiling of achievement to a more purposeful style. Right? And for me personally, that was, I did a lot of mailing in my early days. I told you, I built my business off of open houses and expireds as I was building my database in my first year or 18 months. And a lot of the ways that I communicated with people was through the mail. I was like a crazy mailer. One of the things I realized I had to do differently was I had to spend more on-purpose time on the telephone and move away from the mailing. Not only did it save me a ton of money, it was more effective, right? When you're mailing people, it's kind of reactive. Yet you're waiting for someone to call you. When you're actually reaching out on the telephone, you can actually be proactive, right? You see the difference there? And so for me, I had to learn that. And then I had to figure out what to do. Okay, I had to learn scripts. I had to learn about time blocking. I had to figure out a system and a structure around who I was calling and how I was calling them. I needed to find multiple versions of scripts because you can't really get away with just one. If you call your database 4 times a year and say the exact same thing, at some point they're like, okay, I don't understand. Doesn't he know any other words? So I had to figure out what that all looked like and build a system around it. And that allowed me to more purposefully move forward. This making sense? This E to P concept? I will tell you that I had a coach for a really long time, and I loved her, except when I was struggling with something, and I would say, Cherie, here's my struggle, and this is I've attempted it this way, I've attempted it this way, nothing seems to work, you know, wham, 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 blah, blah, blah. And she would, at some point, she would say to me, okay, stop. So I want to ask you something. Do you recognize what this is? And I was stubborn. I'd say, no, that's what I pay you for. You tell me, what is it? What's my problem? She said, you don't have a problem. You're just going from E to P in this area of your business or in this area of your life. I'm going to tell you what, that at some point, when she would say that to me, like, Rick, stop. You're just going from E to P. I wanted to reach through the phone and strangle her, because what I wanted to hear was an answer. Oh, just do this, and then the success will come and you'll feel better about it. Except that wasn't where I was stuck. I was stuck being stubborn about the way I was doing something versus stepping back, recognizing that I was at that ceiling of achievement and that I had to get some outside assistance to come up with options over here, choose one, and then dive into what I've chosen to get more purposeful about whatever I was attempting to handle. And then once I got some assistance and some guidance, I got some scripts, I got this, I got directions, I got whatever I needed. When I had those options in front of me, chose one, and then picked the tools, and then implemented some strategies around those new tools. Over time, I would start showing up more in that P section and move things forward. Here's one thing I want you to recognize. When you move from E to P in a certain area of your life, and you spend a lot of time then in that P, eventually that P becomes your E. And you eventually hit another ceiling of achievement, right? Because you're now doing something on purpose to create a different result, and you keep doing that to create consistency, and eventually it becomes more of an E than a P. You hit another ceiling. You need to figure out another path to break through. It's just called personal growth, and yet we describe it from the perspective of E to P. Any questions on E to P?
Oh, is he still repping? And I said, he'll tell you the story, okay?
Any questions? Nope. Okay. All right, guys, you've got 3 of the 6 personal perspectives. So let's now move to page 35. We're going to talk a little bit about scripts. And in a minute, I have a video for you. So get prepped to watch my good friend, who is it on there? I think it's Jeff Glover on that video. And he'll talk to you a little bit about scripts for a few minutes. But I want to talk about, page 35 talks about using influential language, right? Influential sales language. Please don't forget that your license describes you in a very specific way. What does your license say? That you're a what? Real estate what?
Agents,
Professional.
agents.
Salesperson.
Salesperson. You all have to read your license because your license says you're a real estate salesperson. And the reason I remind you of that is because I started my career at Century 21 in like 1946 or something like that. I actually think it was 1998, but it feels like 1946. And they sent me to this training person who damaged my business for the first 18 months that I was in business. And when I say damaged, I don't say it to be dramatic. I say it because I really feel like she damaged it, because she drove into our heads the fact that we were not salespeople. We were marketing consultants. That's what we were. We were marketing consultants, and everything we do should be done from the perspective of being marketing consultants. So please don't write that down, because that is not what you are. If you choose to be a marketing consultant, well, that's awesome. Then go be a marketing consultant. But you don't need a real estate license, a real estate salesperson's license, to be a marketing consultant. Is marketing part of the game when you're a real estate professional? Yes. But she was so adamant that sales skills were for other people and marketing skills were for real estate agents. And I believed it, because why wouldn't I believe it? She's who they decided was going to train all the new people. But what that did in my head is it prevented me from learning simple sales skills, from learning and understanding that simple sales skills are a necessity when you are in sales. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to teach you how to be a used car salesman. P.S. Any used car salesman in the room? Okay, good. I mean no disrespect by that. It's just the example that one uses when people have that negative opinion about a salesperson, right? That's not the idea. The idea is, look at page 35. It's using influential language, right? Scripts are designed very specifically, not to be manipulative, but to be beneficial and helpful, both to you and the client. If you look at the bottom of page 35, I want to make a point to you, because we just talked about E to P, right? There are two ways of doing things in real estate. Number one, you can do it entrepreneurially. You can just chat up whoever happens to cross your path. If real estate comes up, great. If it doesn't, well, maybe next time. And unfortunately, what that does for your business is it puts you in a position of, well, you know what? That one just wasn't meant to be. I'm sure I'll get an appointment or actually close a transaction at some point. And the reality is that's likely right. You likely will. And that's why entrepreneurial thinking and activity is so dangerous, because you start to feel like you can create success there. It's just not repeatable, duplicatable, or scalable, because it's all random. You're just kind of chatting with people instead of having a system and a script. Versus that number 2 there at the bottom of the page, right? The purposeful style, utilizing scripts. You know exactly who you want to talk to because you have a database and you have a system to get through it. You time block to communicate with them. And you're prepared to have great conversations that are seeded by scripts. All great conversations are seeded by foundational something or others. We just call them scripts in this world. So talk to me about scripts. Tell me your, like when I say the word scripts, what's the first word or feeling that comes to mind? Put it in the chat or unmute and tell us. Because I can see it on your faces. There are some of you who have very specific feelings about scripts.
I think of being in a play, it's acting.
Yeah, so there you go. So it's communicating a message that you didn't write, right? It's that putting on a character. What else?
I think of scripts as like ways to find like your pretty much like a foundation that you could use to find your own style.
Right. So using it as a foundation to kind of stand upon. Donna says, yippee for scripts. What else? Come on, be honest. I can see it in some of your faces. Just say the words.
It feels unnatural.
Thank you, Julie, thank you for being honest, right? Anybody else feel the same way? Feels unnatural? What else?
Feels like acting.
Yeah, it feels like acting, like maybe it's rehearsed, or it's, oh yeah, there's Christy, programmed, prepared, rehearsed. Right, all those things. Sometimes people say it sounds like, it's like I'm being robotic. I'm a telemarketer. Here's what I would encourage you to do. I would encourage you to look at scripts positively, because great scripts are written very specifically, right? Great scripts are 100% customer oriented and written to benefit the customer throughout the conversation. Some of you have it pre-programmed in your head that somehow scripts are like manipulative. They're not manipulative, they're a guide, right? Because the words that work in certain situations are a guide for the person you're talking to find their way to the answers that they're seeking. That's different than the answers that you're seeking, right? They're designed to help them. A number of you brought up acting. Did you ever see a movie? That's a trick question. Is there anyone who's never seen a movie, right? Did you ever see, so let's take, who's one of the most decorated actors of our time? Let's take Meryl Streep. Did you ever see Meryl Streep in a movie? How many times do you think Meryl Streep gets to say words that Meryl herself wrote or thought up in a movie? Yeah, very rarely. Those of you shaking your head, you're right. Very rarely, right?
Yeah, never. She's playing a character.
Right. Writers write. Actors are there to act. Now, when you get to somebody like Meryl Streep's level, at some point, you may have some influence with the director over maybe some small script changes or ideas. But let me tell you what, the writers don't like that very much because they wrote something very specific, right? And the actor's job is to figure out how to make that come to life. Does Meryl Streep in anything she's ever played, ever, like from the time she was 4 till the time like last week when she finished filming, has she ever come across not genuine? Has she ever come across robotic? Has she ever come across in such a way that you wouldn't just believe that she was that person, that character? So what is the point I'm attempting to make? The point I'm attempting to make is most of the world believes that she is like one of the best people ever in her field. She's one of the most rewarded and decorated actors of our time. People don't go and see her and say, oh, well, that's not really her. That's not authentic. That's not Meryl. Most of the world doesn't know Meryl Streep because they've never actually been to dinner with her and had a conversation with her.
I have a question.
Are the tools of her trade, just like scripts are the tools of your trade.
Can I just ask something or say something?
Of course.
Okay. Well, although I actually have not had dinner with Meryl, but I have met her once or twice. But that's beside the point. But she's playing a character. So you're saying that when we do the real estate scripts, we need to be like, in essence, be the character. So instead of me being Dana Levin, I should be Dana Levin, playing Dana Levin, the realtor, instead of just Dana Levin.
What I'm saying is that people who do this well, if that's how you have to think of it in order to utilize scripts well, then absolutely. Decide that you being you is awesome. You being the business version of you is sometimes a little bit different than you being just you, right? The business version of you isn't going to ride in on a white horse and say, let me help you. The normal version of you might be one of those people who wants to help everybody. But the business version of you is going to go and offer people options and work through pros and cons and then ask the question. I'm curious, based on everything we just discussed, which path do you want to go down? Those are two different ways to approach a conversation. Go ahead, Donna, what else?
So I just wanted to share that, yeah, yes, sometimes you do take on that persona while you're building the muscle and doing things like Debbie suggested, attending her class, practicing with your peers, putting these things into practice. The more you do them, all of a sudden, it doesn't feel like you're taking on a role. It does, you start to embed it. It starts to actually become more of your natural style, particularly when you see the success that it generates. You're going to want to say, oh, let me be a little bit more than that. I go into listing presentations sometimes, and my significant other is also licensed. And when we leave, we sit in the car and he looks at me and he says, Rick would be so proud. Because it is these words that we practice, it's these scripts, but it just comes at first, it feels a little forced and you have to memorize and you have to work on it. And then after a while, you kind of look around like, did I just say that? Because it does become natural if you'll trust it and use it.
Yeah. The two yous do blend to become one, right? And some of you may think, you know what, I don't know that I'm going to, Nick, is that just a really big cat, or is it just because he's in front of you and he looks enormous?
No, I think it's a bit of a fisheye thing going on. He's pretty normal.
Okay, got it. Because I'm looking and thinking, my goodness, is that like a tiger that Nick has in his house? So sorry, as you can see, I get distracted very easily. So the idea of utilizing those scripts if it helps you to decide that you're going to kind of play the role of the real estate salesperson for a while until that merges back into you, well, then absolutely use that. For some of you, you hear that and think, okay, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to learn the scripts and work from me. Well, that's okay too. But if it helps you to decide that there are two people at play there that will eventually kind of merge back into one, then think about it that way. If it doesn't help you, then don't. Yeah, John.
I was gonna say from like my personal experience, like back in middle school, I used to do a monologue, which is like pretty much solo drama. And that's like, so you would assume that like role playing and stuff like that and like reading scripts or something that would just like naturally like just come a lot easier. But once I started my job at K and I had to start role playing again, I noticed that like it's a skill that if you don't use, you definitely lose it. It's something that you have to like continuously do and practice on, or else it's not a normal like thing to get into character and read scripts and role play. So it's like if you're not doing it often, after a while you're just gonna start getting rusty.
Yeah, 100%, because it's not natural. And I'm going to tell you that it's far more natural for most children than it is for adults, right? The older you get, the harder it is to decide that you're going to utilize words that you didn't write to make points and drive business forward. It's like the older you get, the harder it is to learn a second language, right? Or a third language. When you're 9, you're like a sponge. You just suck it on up, man. You speak whatever you want to speak. But the older you get, the harder that becomes, right? So it's just a matter of recognizing where you are, but do understand. But let me ask you this question. So you've spent now, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours with me. Has this come across to you as disingenuous? Have I seemed inauthentic as an instructor to you since we started Ignite?
Definitely not.
Do I sound robotic?
No, entertaining.
Okay, right. And so would it surprise you to know that the way I instruct this course is a script? It's a script that I've memorized and I've done over and 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 over again, but it's a script that I've memorized, right? For those of you who are here for the second, third, or 97th time, what those people will tell you is that, and I do my best to bring new material for the repeat performer, for the repeat attendees, right? But most of it is a script, and the stories are typically the same, and the examples are typically the same. A lot of times the jokes are the same, right? So it is a script to help me stay on track and stay grounded and stay foundationally relevant for you. However, understand that people who use scripts at a high level also understand that you're talking to human beings. When I ask you guys questions, or I ask if you have questions, I can't possibly know what you're going to ask or what your answers to some of the questions I ask might be. So it's the reality of using scripts as a foundation and then being flexible enough on top of that foundation to be human, to listen and respond appropriately, to not get thrown off course if someone throws in a monkey wrench, right? Does that help kind of explain where we're headed here with scripts?
Yep.
Here's how I know. Oh, Barbara, go ahead.
No, I feel as though every time you do Ignite, I feel as though I am learning something new, that you are bringing to mind things that I've forgotten. I mean, but I never feel as though it's not for my benefit. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not as though you're just speaking. I'm learning. I mean, the way that your script is designed is for me to have more knowledge. And what we're supposed to do with our clients is to also allow them to have more knowledge about what it is they want to do.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. That's exactly right. Right. And guys, what I can tell you is this. There are times that we will finish Ignite, right? I'll do a lot of script work with you moving forward. We'll do a lot of work. We'll talk through scripts. I'll give you a whole listing consultation. I'll give you a whole buyer consultation starting late next week, right? We'll do a lot of script work together. And one of the things that I hear from a lot of people is, I wish I could sound like you, meaning me. And my answer to that is this: that's not really what you wish. What you want is you want the foundation to settle into your body the way it is settled into mine, so that you have the confidence to let it go and then just respond humanly, right? I will tell you that just takes practice. It's not like, I'm like this real estate genius. Trust me, I told you, the first 10 minutes we were together, I told you I have done everything wrong that you can possibly do. I am far from a real estate genius. I'm just somebody who's done this a whole lot. And here's the other thing I will mention to you about scripts. Since I started instructing Ignite, I am 1,000 times better at scripts than I ever was when I was actually still in the field. I used them, but I'm 1,000,000 times better. I know I went from 1,000 to 1,000,000. I'm 1,000,000 times better today than I ever was when I was actually listing and selling real estate. Why is that?
Practice.
Yeah, it's tons of practice, and it's some ego. When I'm sitting in front of a seller, I knew I could make it up well enough if I had to, and they didn't know any better. So I could come out of that unscathed. My job every single day is to be in front of all of you to help you make money. That's a responsibility I take really very seriously. So I can't afford, because you can't afford, for me to wing it. I have to know this stuff inside and out. And where the ego comes in is, I don't want to get up in front of all of you and sound stupid. So all of those things put together have created a passion around practice, such that I have elevated myself to a place of script work that I never actually achieved when I was in the field. I know now what it takes to feel the way I feel armed to that extent. And it has everything to do with daily practice. Just practice it every single day. And after 30 days, all of a sudden you start to think, my goodness, I really know this stuff. And after 90 days, you think, holy Christmas, I might be able to stop this practice. Don't, but you start to think that way, right? And then after 180 days or a year, you don't even think about practice as practice. It's just part of your job, right? John, I have to say, I'm impressed because you were at work and then you were on the street and now you're home. I don't know, you were like magic. All of a sudden you're in your house.
Yeah, so I was at work when we started the call, then I had to go catch the bus and then caught the bus. Now I'm officially in my dining room, ready to continue on listening.
Well, excellent. All right, so guys, what I want to do is this. I want you to listen to Jeff Glover for just a few minutes. I want you to take some notes, and then we'll talk about your ahas from listening to Jeff talk about scripts. And then we're going to move forward.
Hi, I'm Jeff Glover, and I'm going to tell you the top 5 things that you need to know about using scripts. Step 1, you're going to need to get your scripts from a top agent at the office, your team leader, a MAPS coach, or of course Keller Williams University. Step 2, we're going to need to do a total transformation of, instead of talking and telling, of asking questions. Selling isn't telling, selling is asking a series of questions that leads to desired response. So instead of talking so much, we need to get in the habit of asking questions. And asking questions gives us control of the conversation. Control of the conversation gives us our ultimate outcome, which is an appointment set or closing. Step 3, we need to listen with good intentions. Well, what I mean by that is we need to listen to their answers instead of just listening to them talk and asking another question that comes to mind. For example, instead of asking a seller where they're moving to and then going on to the next question, how soon would you like to be there? Ask them, where are you moving to? And when they give you a response, ask them, what takes you there? Step 4 in becoming better at scripts is we need to learn to mimic, mirror, and match the prospect. What I mean by that is we have to listen to their tone of voice. We have to speed up or slow down based on how fast the prospect is talking. That means when they respond and say, we're moving to Toledo, oh, Toledo, that's exciting. What takes you there? 93% of communication is body language and tonality. And that means only 7% are the words that we say or the questions that we ask. Step 5, we need to take these 5 points and practice them daily. If you think of NFL teams, they practice 50, 60 hours on the practice field for a 1-hour game. Our game is our presentations and our appointments, and we need to practice daily. Everything that we've learned every single day before we meet with our clients. When it comes to scripts, my biggest aha is that everybody has their own scripts. We're pre-programmed to have scripts, and we're talking and asking questions that are scripted. However, what we found is that most of our own scripts are no good. And so we have to learn the right scripts, the right questions to maintain control of the conversation. Thanks for watching KW Connect. Make it a great day.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We appreciate you. So tell me what you heard. What were your ahas?
Selling is not telling, it's asking.
Yeah, that's a good one, Frank. Selling is not telling. It's asking, right? To stop talking so much and start asking more questions. A lot of the best scripts out there are question-based, right? You'll start to see that as I give you more and more scripts, as you read through the script book, right? They're question-based. What else? Stephen?
The listening. I think that's so important.
Yeah, I will tell you, the way I teach it, I call it aggressive listening, right? You have to get really good at aggressive listening. Someone once told me that God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth. I should use them in that proportion, right? So you should be listening twice as much as you are talking, because when you, and here, that's what I was talking about before. At some point, you have to let go of thinking about what you're going to say next, and instead just focus on the person you're talking with, focus on them intently, listen, because when you listen, they'll actually give you the cues about where you go next. If it's only about the words that you know, well, then you're kind of disconnected from the person sitting across the table from you.
I was just going to add, that's when the conversation really starts to happen, is when they start opening up to you, you're really listening to, and you're just kind of going back and forth on what they're saying. You still have the questions you're going to ask, but maybe now you went down this path a little bit, and now you go back to your next question, and then that just builds that relationship even more.
100%. That's right. That's right. What else? What else did you hear?
I like the part about like body language and like tonality and stuff like that. Cause like one thing like I used to do whenever I met with people like was getting interviewed is that I would mimic the body language of that person. So if they would lean slightly to the left, I would also lean slightly to the left. And then like sometimes I would mention that I intentionally copied them afterward. And most of the time they wouldn't like be so surprised if like they didn't notice.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's cool is that mirror matching serves to, it's kind of like, it's nonverbal script work, mirror matching, right? If someone talks really fast, well, then you talk slow, well, you should speed up. Right? If someone talks, I tend to talk fast. The people I struggle with the most are people who talk really slow, because it's really difficult for me. I have to go out of my way to slow down my speech, right? I can't help it. I'm from New York. I talk fast. And so the idea of getting slow and maybe dropping my volume a little bit. See, then I dropped the volume, but I sped up again. It's hard to do. And yet that's all that nonverbal stuff that really helps you connect with people. What else did you hear?
Asking questions gives you control.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest takeaways from that video. Asking questions gives you control. Asking questions gives you control. I will tell you, when you are a skilled consultant, questions are literally the answer to everything. They are the key to life and business and relationships and everything, right? It keeps you from demonstrating how much you know to asking how much someone else knows, right? Sometimes one of the struggles of moving from the selling and telling version of real estate to the consultative style of real estate is ego. It's one of the things that it was for me. Like, I enjoyed being the smartest person in the room. And so when I was with sellers or with buyers, I wanted to make sure they knew how much I knew. Right. And so just looking back at that, I think to myself, yeah, that was the mistake. There was, it was about my ego. It wasn't about listening. It wasn't about the other person on the other side of the table. Right. And if that's something that you experience, again, doesn't make you a horrible human being. It just makes you like most people, right? Most of us have a version of ego that sometimes creeps in that doesn't allow us to step back and put somebody else first. Question asking will allow you it will help you to do that more readily, even if you have other things you have to clear. I'll tell you a quick story. We're in business with somebody by the name of Jeff Stella. Some of you may know Jeff. Jeff was a New York City detective before he retired and then came to the Market Center as a real estate professional. And I was the one who interviewed Jeff. And I think I'm a relatively skilled consultant from a question asking perspective. He was a New York City detective. So you can be guaranteed that he was a skilled consultant and knew how to ask questions. And what was fascinating about our initial conversation was we met, we shook hands, we sat down, and I started to ask him questions. And I could feel in the middle of it that he could feel that I was the question asker and he was the question answerer. And what did Dana just remind us of? Dana just reminded us that the person who asks the questions is the person who maintains control. And Jeff didn't like not being in control because he was very much used to being in control from his previous job. And I could start to feel the tug of war in the room, right? He started to ask more questions, which I'm thinking, okay, well, I should answer that. And yet I'm not asking a question. So it was literally this struggle back and forth between two skilled consultants around who was going to be in control. And so what we finally ended up doing was I ended up saying to him, you know what, it sounds like you have a number of things you want to ask. Why don't I step back from asking you questions for a while and allow you to ask some questions? Would that be a benefit to you? Which of course is a question. So I got my last little question in. But it was how we, without recognizing that's what we were doing to each other, it allowed us to kind of stop arm wrestling each other for control. But again, most people that you have a conversation with don't have the skills that we're kind of in competition in that particular room. And looking back at that, there was some ego involved in that for me as well, because I thought, well, I'm not going to be bested by, you know, by somebody else. The ego has to take a step back and say, you know what, I'm going to stop talking now, because it sounds like you have a lot of questions. So why don't you just kind of deliver all of that to me? And I ceded control. I ceded the stage over to him for a while, and then jumped back in, and we had to go back and forth in a less competitive manner, right? But it was an interesting conversation. Anything else from Jeff's video? How many times did he say practice? Just
Every
twice?
day.
Oh, every day. That's right, every day. So not just twice. That's good, right? I want you to remember about that practice thing, right? Because you're going to start learning on Tuesday some skills that you're going to start utilizing to find business. And then by a week from Tuesday, you're going to start learning skills that you'll start implementing with your conversations with buyers. And then 2 weeks from Tuesday, you're going to start learning skills that you'll start implementing on your listing appointments. And if you only decide to learn them once, they're just not as powerful for you. So what I would encourage you to do is I would find a path. And again, Debbie gave you a path. If you're not interested in finding a person or two people in the market center or on this call or in your house who are going to help you practice some of this stuff, show up with Debbie's Business Builders, because that's a level of practice that you get with other people who are looking for practice. Here's what I can promise you. Those of you who choose to practice and start practicing now will find business and close business faster and more consistently than those of you who do not. That's just real, right? And so if it's just a choice, just make the choice. If it feels weird, or it feels like, well, you know what, I've been doing this long enough that I shouldn't have to do that. Well, then I would go back and look and say, okay, well, what have my results been without it? Could I change my results? Could my results be better or different or closer to what I'm looking for with it, right? And just give up the judgment of it, because judgment doesn't bring you forward. Just look at it objectively. What are the pros? What are the cons? Where do I want to be? Make sense? All right, guys, what is the time? So we have 17 minutes, 17 whole minutes. All right. I am going to, what I'd like to do for the last 17 minutes, I'd like to talk about your calendar a little bit. I'm going to give you some homework over the course of the next few days about your calendar. So if it's all right with you, actually, there's one thing I want to do beforehand, because I forgot to do it Tuesday, and then I remembered it earlier in our conversation, and then I forgot to give it to you again. So let's pretend that this is still the first 10 minutes of our time together back on Tuesday. I meant to give you what I believe your job description is. Again, this came up earlier today in conversation. And when you hear what I believe your job description is, you'll recognize where it really came up earlier. But what I believe is that if we have a clear description of what the job really is, it'll help you answer questions that will come up as we go through. Well, should I do this or should I do that? Well, let's go back to the job description. And what I find is that a lot of people believe that the job description inside of real estate is, you know, selling houses or matching a buyer with a seller or marketing or negotiation or, you know, all of those things. And it may surprise you to hear that it's really none of those things. Those are all activities that we engage in. However, the job description, and this isn't in your materials, by the way, because this you're getting from me. So you should write it down or type it out, however you're going to do that. The job description of a real estate salesperson, a real estate professional, is to interpret current conditions to interpret current conditions such that the client can make the best business decision possible. I put it in the chat for you. To interpret current conditions such that the client can make the best business decision possible. That's what we do for a living. Notice it doesn't say advise people on real estate, because that's not what we do for a living. If you want to come up with a version of how we might advise, again, I prefer the word educate over advise, because advise almost always sucks in a version of your opinion, right? When you give someone advice, it's usually combined with your opinion. I think that gets you into trouble. Instead, if you just interpret current conditions, that's kind of here objectively, here's what it is. Here are the options, here are the pros and cons. Interpret current conditions. So we might interpret current market conditions for a seller to make the best choice about where they position their home. I'm going to teach you a listing consultation that does not have you give a seller a number. Oh, shocking. How do we do that? I'm going to tell you how you do it is very efficiently and very effectively. Maybe the current conditions for one of your buyers is that the feedback you got back when you presented the offer from the listing agent is, we actually have 3 other offers that just came in, so you're now one of 4. Here's what the seller is asking of you. And so the way you help interpret current conditions for that particular client is you objectively talk through, here's what the offer was. We thought we were alone on the table. We're now not. We're now one of 4. Here are your options. We can go this way, or this way. We can accept what's come back. We can reject what's come back and go find another house, or we can modify what's come back. And if modification is your choice, here's how we can do that. Sometimes interpreting current conditions for a client is as simple as a question as this. So I'm curious, do you still think you want to purchase that property? Knowing what you know now, do you still want to pursue that particular property? Why is it, do you think, that agents don't ask that question very often?
They're afraid the answer could be no and they won't have a deal.
That's exactly right. Do you see the problem with that? Who is that about? It's about you. And it's not about you. You have to give up it being about you, because it's never about you. Remember, when you're hired as a fiduciary. We're going to talk about that next week. But you're hired as a fiduciary, right? And you all passed your test. You all know what that means. It means you put the client's interest above yours all the time. There's never a time that the client's interests aren't above yours. That means something. It's why I like to help you underline the fact that you are a salesperson, because what I believe is that when you practice fiduciary, consultative salesperson skills, you get to change the way the world views salespeople. Because when you're consultative and acting as a fiduciary, you do things and say things that people aren't expecting from a salesperson, because it's not about you. Which is why that question, I'm curious, based on that information, is this still something you want to pursue, is such an easy question to ask. If they say no, that's okay. Great, let's go find something else. Or maybe the next question is, so I'm curious, if it's not this one, is this still the best time for you to be a buyer? Is this still the best time for you to be a seller? I know this process has been a struggle for you. Are you still in the seat of, let's go and do this again? Or do you think that maybe you should wait a bit? Well, I think I should wait. Okay, let's talk about that then. How long do you think you want to wait? Well, maybe the seller says, you know what, let's take it off and put it back on in the spring. I understand. Talk to me about how that's a benefit to you. I'm curious. Can you define spring for me? Because most people think spring is when the tulips come up, right? And that's in late April or May. Most of you on this call know that spring in real estate starts Super Bowl Sunday, right? That's the spring market in real estate locally. And Super Bowl Sunday, it's usually cold, dreary, it could be snowing, right? And the tulips aren't for another 2 or 3 months. But that is the truth around the spring. So can you define the spring for me? Can you talk to me about what it is you're looking to accomplish by taking the house off the market now? This isn't me convincing somebody to do something that works best for me because I'd like to get paid. If that's your path or your perspective in talking to a client, please hear this. So if you're doing something else, stop doing something else for just a minute. You can go back to it as soon as I'm done with this sentence, I promise. If that's your perspective on creating real estate transactions, the idea that you want to convince someone to do something because it's in the best interest of you and your paycheck, hear this clearly. That is a lead generation and conversion issue in your business. It may also be a scarcity versus abundance mindset issue, right? But from a business perspective, that's a lead generation issue. It has nothing to do with that one client or that one transaction. Because if you were lead generating and lead converting at a high enough level, you're not attached to any one result. You're not attached to any one transaction going to a closing. That one closing is not your only path to pay your rent or pay your mortgage or keep the lights on. Right? And when that happens, sometimes we get into that scarcity mindset and that starts to create like a desperation thinking. And all of a sudden our consultative skills go out the window. And instead of asking what's best for the client, we're advising based on what's best for us. See how that can make a nasty turn? Donna, what else on that?
So a question like that. So knowing what you know now, do you still want to buy this house? It really sets you up as, it just demonstrates to your client how much you are in this for them. It's exactly what Rick is saying, the flip side of when it's all about you. You clearly demonstrate because you know, and they know there's a possibility they say, yeah, no, I don't want to buy this house. And you're willing to walk with them and then of course push through to then what's our next plan? Where are we going next? Let's go back to the drawing. Let's go back to, the options and solutions we talked about before. But really putting it out there, it is going to make you different. It's going to make this job different for you also. I think it makes the job a little easier because when it's all about them and not about you, I'm just going to say you always make the right decision when there's a choice because it's always about them.
That is so right. That is so right. That is so, you know what? When this gets posted to YouTube tomorrow, you should all press play, fast forward 2 hours in and listen to what Donna just said all over again. Because there are no truer words than what Donna just said. So it 100% makes everything simple. You don't have to make decisions. You just know what the right path is. Did you hear when Donna was talking? Nearly everything she said was a question. It was just a question, a question, a question. And it just comes so naturally to her now that she didn't even recognize it. But all of those things that she was kind of just demonstrating what she might say to the client, they were all questions. One of the things that I have learned is that one of the best ways to create trust and loyalty with people is to do and say things that they weren't expecting you to do or say. Let's face it. I mean, let's just be real with each other, right? Our industry as a whole doesn't have the greatest reputation, right? Real estate agents are maybe just a step or two up from used car salesmen, right? In a lot of people's minds. Again, part of our mission is to change that by behaving differently and being different. But when you ask a question where you put someone's needs first and they were expecting you to say, oh, just buy it. You're not going to find anything else like this. Instead of asking questions around, now that might be true. They might not find anything else like that. However, you just saying that isn't consultative. What if you turn that into a question? Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, may I express a concern about walking away from this particular property? Would it surprise you to know that the uniqueness of this particular house may be very difficult to duplicate? I'm curious, are you okay not being able to duplicate these things in this house that you said were important? I support you either way. I'm just curious, I just want to point out to you, would it surprise you? Right, so you can still say stuff, but just use some script work like, would it surprise you to know? When you put would it surprise you to know in front of something, it turns it into a question, right? So one of the ways that you get to make a statement and ask it as a question is just to put would it surprise you to know in front of it. In my house, like my kids are so onto me with that kind of stuff. Because I use the same scripts at home. When my son says something, I'm like, oh, okay. So no, would it surprise you to know that there are actually a number, you know what BOLD is? Some of you know what BOLD is. BOLD is a coaching and training program that we bring to you every once in a while. We'll be bringing it again probably in 2022. And my kids are known to say, Dad, stop bolding me. Because they know I learn a lot of this stuff in that training program. Okay. So it's 5:58. Let me answer, I'm going to show you, I'm going to answer Donna's question visually, right? So we're going to stop for today. I know we didn't get to the calendar. We'll start there on Tuesday. And then we're going to move quickly through Power Session 2 and into 3. And 3 is where we start source of business. So by the second half of Tuesday's class, we will be through a lot of the foundational conversations and work and moving head forward. We're moving full speed ahead into source of business. So be excited about that. Our YouTube channel is called KW203 TV. And I will find it for you, show it to you, and then put the link in the chat box as we tick out of our last few minutes. So everything that we do, or nearly everything that we do, is recorded. And so if you want to go back and see it afterwards, sometimes same day, and sometimes by the next morning, right? It depends on, like these classes end after the staff has gone home for the evening, right? So this will be posted certainly by 11 or 12 noon tomorrow. So as soon as the staff gets in and takes care of downloads from the previous day. Sometimes if they happen earlier, like the marketing thing that we did earlier, that's already posted on the YouTube channel. So let me give you, here is the link in the chat. And let me just show you what it looks like so you can see it. This is what the YouTube page looks like. You can see a lot of goofy looking thumbnails. There's me talking with my hands. And so when you go here to videos, you pretty much get every video that so all of our Crush It calls in the morning. If you are not on the 9 o'clock call and you miss it one morning and you want to make sure you pick up the info, you can come here. Ignite is I think there are Ignite playlists as well. You guys probably know better than I do. Here's Ignite. So I'm pretty sure Alrighty, good afternoon. That's me talking to you. So if you go to the Ignite playlist, most of the Ignites are posted in there. Anyway, KW203 TV, you have pretty much everything at your disposal. If you're new to the company, whether you're new to real estate or new to the company, you can go back and, how do I go back? Oh, there we go. You can go back and check out things that we've done in the past couple of months. If you heard about some cool training or you heard about whatever, how do I get rid of this? We heard about, my Ask Rick Almost Anything questions. Boy, I do talk with my hands a lot, don't I? My stars. This apparently is me being attacking someone. I'm not sure what that's about. Here's one. If you're interested in prepping for next week,
Leslie, Les,
if you go,
Leslie?
well, somebody's got an open mic. There we go. Okay. So one of the things that I would encourage you, I'm gonna open this and put the link in here. Watch this over the weekend. Find some time to watch this over the weekend. It is Len Schwartz having a conversation around how he works with his database. Len, of everybody that in our company, so that second one is Len Schwartz's video. And it's Len doing his events and how he finds the business inside of his database. He does it better than pretty much anybody he does it better than anyone in our organization. He is the standard there. That's an hour-long video with so many great ideas that will get you thinking about database, because database is not just about build it and call it, right? I know that's all we've talked about so far. Watch Len's video, and then when you come back next week, as we talk more about database, you'll then have the foundation of events and other cool things that you can do with your database. So it's not all about call them. So, but I want you to hear it from Len, because he teaches it and talks about it better than anybody else, and he has massive success doing it. I know Shelly is Len's partner in the business, and so Shelly, I know you're on, or at least you were on. Oh yes, at least your smiling face is still on. I'm not sure if you're still here live, but Shelly can then answer some questions if you have any questions around what you watched Len do. Make sense? Everyone good with that homework? Okay, so
Yep.
watch Len instead of doing the calendar exercise that I was going to give you, because we didn't get to the calendar. So watch Len, and we will see you tomorrow morning at 9 for our Friday Crush It call, which is about gratitude and a bold law that we talk about. And then we'll see you 4 o'clock on Monday for 4 o'clock on Tuesday for the next night of Ignite. Guys, have a great weekend. If I don't see you tomorrow, it's a pleasure to spend time with you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.